You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I am your host, Steph, and today I'm joined with Christopher Johnson. How you doing today, Chris?
I'm good. Living the dream, my friend. How you doing? You all right?
I'm good. I see you already removed all the 49ers gear. You know, usually you have that on, but you just want to forget about the 49ers today.
Nah. I switched it up today for sure. I'm kind of in hockey mode. We got some just All-Star break just ended for the Tampa Bay Lightning and the rest of the NHL, of course. So gearing up for hockey season doesn't really start for me until the Niners season ends. So
that's fair.
Made that transition to bring out some of the Lightning stuff.
That's fair. Well, I actually haven't had a chance to talk to you really since the NFC Championship. I know we exchanged some texts that day and we're just really bummed. But now that we've had some time to let those emotions settle a little bit, how are we feeling about how that went down, just the season overall? How you feeling?
Yeah, so it's actually probably a good thing, right? That the timing, worked out the way it did for us to connect today, because it gave me some time to think about it, decompress a little bit, let the emotions kind of subside. I was definitely heartbroken, seeing that game play out the way it did. It's one thing to, lose, right? Or get beaten, when you gave it your all. But, with Brock Purdy going down the sixth play of the game, offensive play of the game, that was just tough. It was just a very difficult game to watch, as it is. I'm sure many people can say 49er fans are not, right? Unless you're an Eagles fan, I'm sure they were loving it. But for fans of the game, we were all robbed of that opportunity to see two teams really go at it, right? And what's just so crazy is, we may never see something like that ever again. I'm saying, college, NFL, to have a team lose all their quarterbacks in a game, in that game, as opposed to, going into the game having to make an emergency, acquisition or an emergency plan or something, much less in a championship game. That may never ever happen. And for it to take place like that was just unreal. But, I think, getting away from the game and as days go by and stuff, we had a really good season. We had a really good season. I think that, most, beat reporters, beat writers, content creators probably wouldn't have had us winning 13 games. Certainly not going on 12 game winning streak at some point in the season, right? So for the squad to have been on their third string quarterback, and to have the success that they did, you can't be anything less than proud of the team and happy for their accomplishments. But there's always like you said to me, when we were talking, it's just that unknown. You just don't know, what could have been if we would have, not had that injury so early in the game. And, one last thing, just looking back at all, just the heartbreak, and just the getting so close and falling short and stuff, that's tough. It's tough to experience that again. But, starting September 0-0, and, get rolling again.
Yeah, I think it's the not ever knowing that is always going to eat away at me for this one. But, Brandon Ayuk was making headlines, these past couple of days because of what he said when he was live with the SF Niners. Shout out Brad, man. Brad, grinding, hardest working content creator out there. So Brandon Ayuk's comments, it seemed like he was pretty confident that the 49ers would have been able to, what he says, expose the Eagles defense. The full quote is, "I don't know fully about that defense. They talk about them being a good defense. I'm not sure. I think this Kansas City pass game will expose what we thought we were going to expose before some unfortunate circumstances. They got extremely lucky." What do you make of these comments? I mean, do you agree with him? I personally, I don't see the issue with it. As someone tweeted about it earlier, and they're like, if a player doesn't think this about their team, that would be the issue. That wouldn't be a headline. But every team that's playing in the NFC Championship game has to have this energy. You know what I mean? They have to think they're the best team, and they're going to. So not exactly, a lot of headline material personally, but I get it. I get why it's making the headlines. But what do you make of it?
I don't disagree. I mean, especially early in the game, even after Brock Purdy went down and, being so close to halftime and it was so close to being 7-7 before, the Eagles, made it 14-7 and then we had the fumble and then went to 21-7. For all intents and purposes, much of that first half, the defense was holding their own against the Eagles, right? So that being said, offensively, if we had a semblance of some sort of offensive game plan, I shouldn't even say game plan, offensive attack, that was more than what Josh Johnson was able to, conjure up at quarterback. I do believe that, Shanahan with his scheme, with our skill positions and our playmakers, that the Niners would have definitely been able to, move the ball through the air on the Eagles. I mean, shoot, even the play that Purdy got hurt on was, setting up to be a shot play, that, Ayuk was open. I just wish that, hindsight's obviously 2020. I'm sure Purdy will replay that in his mind. He probably already has, a million times. But if he would have kind of like let that ball go when Ayuk was making his break, and that could have been a big gain there, and maybe he wouldn't have gotten injured in the way that he did. So, yeah, I had really good feelings, going into the game about, Shanahan's ability to scheme players open, and to really attack that middle part of the defense in the passing game. So as it relates to like specifically with Ayuk, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, you got to have confidence in your guys. I mean, the reality is though, this will, once you say something, it's out there forever. It's going to be, he'll be roasted on that if somehow, the Eagles go and they beat the Chiefs or whatever, or the Eagles deep, pass defense or secondary, like locks down the Chiefs playmakers. They're banged up right now. The Chiefs are banged up. So, I mean, if they were all healthy, I wouldn't doubt it. But I still think that, I mean, with Patrick Mahomes, I don't think that Brandon Ayuk is too far off in his assessment there. So, but he did kind of preface, where he did kind of give himself an out. He prefaced it by saying, I know I'm on my couch, so, but my thoughts are, and then he gave his thoughts. So,
yeah, no one's
giving himself a little
that
bit of an out there.
Yeah, because like my thought is, man, like he's giving the Eagles bulletin material, and he's not even playing them this week. It's like, man, you getting them all hyped up to play the Chiefs, and I don't want the Eagles to win. So
and the Niners got to go back to their house next year in the regular season. So
yes, that's gonna be quite the game, and sure. I know everyone's gonna have their popcorn ready for that one, because 49ers, at least, they're gonna have something to prove. I'm sure the Eagles will as well, but definitely the 49ers will be playing with a bit of a chip on their shoulder. But look, let's just move on from the NFC Championship game, okay? It is what it is. It's going to hurt. I'd rather move on at this point. I'm in, like, draft mode. I'm in, just off-season mode. And there's been a lot of things that have happened surrounding the 49ers, and just a lot of question marks going into the off-season. So first being DeMeco Ryans. Last time we spoke, we were talking about, he was a finalist for a few places. The Texans got it done with DeMeco, and he is their new head coach. Shout out to DeMeco, man. Definitely deserves that deal. It was like 6-year deal. So it seems like he's going to get the opportunity to, the opportunity of time and just be able to grow that franchise. So I'm glad, I'm happy for him. But now this kind of brings up the conversation of, well, what do the 49ers do at defensive coordinator? Well, they've had a couple of interviews or conversations with different guys. Chris Harris was the most one who interviewed with 49ers last week. And then Steve Wilks is interviewing with the 49ers. He was going to be today interviewing with them. And Ian Rappaport said not too long ago that is expected to be a lengthy conversation or meeting between those two parties. So what do you make of either of these options? I mean, do you kind of have a favorite? Oh, and by the way, Vic Fangio, who we had discussed, being an option for the 49ers, he went to the Dolphins. So that's why he's not in the conversation anymore. It's now pretty much between, Chris Harris and Steve Wilks. So how are you feeling about, potential defensive coordinator suitors here?
Yeah, so I think Vic Fangio is definitely my number one. I was actually hoping that he would agree to terms or be offered the opportunity, right? And then they were able to see eye to eye in that regard. But I think there was too much hype or too much conversation regarding like Vic Fangio's scheme 4-3-3-4. I think that's much to do about nothing. I don't think that was probably the case. Shanahan did make some comments in his presser and his end of season presser talking about wanting to keep a lot of the coaches and wanting to maintain the same scheme. There could be a lot of variables there, right? Maybe Vic wanted to bring some of his guys, and he saw it as opportunity, to not necessarily be able to bring some of his coaches. Another part of it is simply timing. Maybe it was a timing thing, right? The Niners are still in their search. Vic, could have seen the Dolphins' opportunity as a bird in the hand, so he was like, "Hey, listen, they're throwing me. I think he's like getting like what $4.5 million, and he's probably." He may have seen that as more of a attractive opportunity to take as opposed to wait for the potential opportunity in San Francisco and then not get that and then be out of a opportunity altogether. So I'm not putting too much stock in like the fit per se, but there may have been some personnel decisions maybe potentially that Vic wanted to make that he didn't think he would be able to do if he were to go to San Francisco. But as it relates for Brian Flores, that being said, though, I'm sorry, not Brian Flores, excuse me, Steve Wilks.
Brian Flores just got hired by the Vikings.
Yeah, that's all. That was at the top of my mind. I had something to talk to you about Brian Flores in a second. But Steve Wilks seems like he's a good fit, right? I saw some comments from interview that Brian Burns made, talking about just the person that Steve Wilks is. Many people around the league and many fans think that he may have gotten a raw deal in Carolina, kind of turning that team around, I guess you could say. I mean, he finished 6-6, but he put them on a better trajectory that they were at prior to that, right? So having that head coaching experience, being able to really, get the most out of those players. I don't know that he's ever had, players on his roster like, to the likes of Dre Greenlaw or Nick Bosa or Fred Warner, or Shavarius Ward. So, with some of the success that he has had, and then be able to, couple that with, the playmakers that we have on the defensive side of the ball really makes him an attractive candidate for the position. And it sounds like he's, I think it was either Rappaport or Schefter that said earlier that he's kind of like the front runner. Like it would be kind of like a surprise if he's not, the guy that's named. So yeah, we'll see. I one thing I am like confident of is that Kyle Shanahan will find whoever he offers the job to. I think will be the best person for the job. I mean, he's basically struck gold with the last two defensive coordinators, and really, I mean, it would take a lot, in my opinion. I'm not trying to knock on wood, but to kind of mess up this defense, right? We've got a good there's a good scheme, there's a good set of core players, a lot of experience. We have vets, playmakers. So I'm not trying to say that anyone can coach the defense, but on the same token, with the skills that we have on that side of the ball, as well as with Kyle Shanahan having an eye for who he wants to fit his, system and his culture, I have all faith that, they'll get the right guy at the job.
Yeah, I think so too. And just to go back to Kyle Shanahan's comments in that presser last week, he said, "I love our defensive staff. I love our defense. I'm trying to get something where we don't have to turn much over. I would love to keep our same staff. So I'm going to talk to some guys on our staff." So it really feels like, yeah, D'Amico Ryans, he just, fit right out, right? Because he was hired away. But besides that, Kyle Shanahan wants to keep pretty much everything the same if he can. So I think with a guy like Steve Wilks, I agree. It seems like a good fit. Shout out Jordan for getting that interview with Brian Burns, by the way. If you guys haven't checked that out, make sure you guys do. It's on Twitter, and I'm sure it was posted on Niners Nation as well. But yeah, I mean, I for me, that's a top choice. So 49ers, again, meeting with Steve Wilks today. And it's a win-win for Steve Wilks, too, because if he does want the opportunity to be a head coach, San Francisco is the place to be. You see how often they've been churning, head coaches from former defensive coordinators out there with 49ers. So I think it's a great opportunity for him as well. And so we'll just wait to see what happens. Hopefully we get some news, by end of day. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, where my mind was at earlier about the Brian Flores stuff. One thing that was kind of interesting to me was, I mean, I know he just got hired by the Vikings, but for the last couple of weeks, he was, being named as a candidate for different roles and such. But it didn't ever appear that, the Niners had interest there. I just thought that was interesting. What did you think about that? Did it, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think there was any interest there either. I mean, people were also talking about, is it Evero?
Right, Denver, right?
So along 49er fan circles, people were bringing his name up as a potential option, but I didn't ever hear his name come up as like a candidate or someone that they were going to meet with. So, I mean, clearly the 49ers have their guys that they've keyed in on. And at this point, it's either going to be Steve Wilks or Chris Harris. So we'll just wait and see. But, a couple of other conversations that come along with the news of DeMeco Ryans going to the Texans is the fact that, now he might poach some 49ers coaches or assistant coaches away from the 49ers, right? So there's talk if like Chris Kosarek, he could potentially become defensive coordinator for DeMeco in Houston. I don't know about that, because what's so interesting about this whole talk about Chris Kosarek, people are saying he wants to be a defensive coordinator. He has said he does not want to be a defensive coordinator. Now, I don't know if that has changed since the last time he has said that, but I've seen reports he didn't have interest in it before. So I don't know how or under what circumstances that would change. So I don't know if I believe the talk or the hype of, Kosarek potentially leaving to become a defensive coordinator for the Texans. But either way, I think, money talks. If the 49ers, give him a raise, if they pay him more money, I think he would more than likely stay. And based on Kyle Shanahan's comments, they want to keep as much of their defensive coaches, in-house, right? Keep the same guys in. So Kosarek would fall under that. Another name is Bobby Slowick, who is the passing game coordinator for the 49ers. So now on the offensive side of the ball, and he is getting his name is being thrown around as a potential offensive coordinator for Texans. In fact, it sounds like he might be one of the favorites, right? So, when that starts a whole nother discussion of, well, now, Kyle Shanahan has to look for another passing game coordinator. And, it seems like every year, like there's some turnover with the 49ers. Every year it seems to be okay. So I'm not too worried about it, but I don't know. What do you think?
No, I'm with you on that. And, it's like a gift and a curse, right? That's definitely the hallmark of a good team. When your coaching staff is getting poached or, always being interviewed or in the, consideration for different jobs around the league. I saw something somewhere. I can't remember if it was, I may be wrong. It may have been maybe Washington, but I think I saw something about Anthony Lynn too being considered for an OC job somewhere.
Yes, Commanders.
Yeah, and granted, he's been with the squad for a year, so I don't know, where Kyle Shanahan's head is in that regard. Like, if he really enjoyed, their partnership and having him being on his staff, maybe he provides him a promotion to offensive coordinator or something, kind of like what he did with Mike McDaniel the final year before he was with the team. I really don't know who all was like floating around out there in the event that Slowick does go become the OC in Houston. I know Byron Leftwich got let go in Tampa. But yeah, I'm not sure what some of the other candidates would look like to replace Slowick for a passing game coordinator. But that's another thing too. We're probably going to see here within the next few days, to see if they make that hire. Yeah.
I mean, with those like assistant coaches, I feel like, and maybe just even in most cases, they like to hire from within, right? So maybe the offensive quality control coaches that they have could be an option. So we'll just have to wait and see if anything happens, because again, I was hearing, or we were seeing Anthony Lynn's name getting brought up with the Commanders, right? But I haven't heard any of that in a couple days now, so I don't know if so we'll see. But I did hear that, or I did see on Twitter that he was one of the top candidates. So Brian Cope says, smash the like button, everyone. I agree with Bryant. Couldn't agree more. But listen, we're going to move on to the next topic, and that is the QB situation with 49ers, because as always, that is the one with the most juice, the most talk, the most discussion, and the most discourse, as always. It's not changed. Now, it seems that Jimmy Garoppolo is out the door based on, we already kind of assumed that, right? But Kyle Shanahan pretty much closed the door on any possibility of Jimmy Garoppolo coming back. In the presser last week, he said, no, I don't see any scenario of Jimmy coming back. So this is as expected, right? But so I'm not going to dwell too much on this. Now, I'm curious where Jimmy Garoppolo lands. Just out of curiosity, morbid curiosity, maybe. There are some options for him out there. It doesn't impact anything for the 49ers. It's not going to be a trade or anything. It's just he's a free agent, right? So there are some teams out there. Raiders.
Stephanie's internet might have dropped, but what she was saying was, though, that there's some prospective squads that Jimmy Garoppolo may go to. So, of course, the Raiders, Washington, Tampa, New York Jets. What are some of the other teams that we were discussing earlier that are in flux? Houston. So we were going to be talking about ultimately where we kind of foresaw where we could possibly foresee Jimmy Garoppolo landing. When Stephanie comes back, we'll see what she thinks about it. But personally, I think that it's going to be interesting because similar to last year, we're going to kind of have to wait for kind of like that first tier of quarterbacks to kind of land somewhere. So Steph's back. So what I was saying, Steph, was I was kind of going over some of the squads that we were talking about before. So like the Raiders, Washington, Tampa, the Jets, Houston. I thought last year was crazy with quarterback movement, but this year has the potential to be, really crazy with quarterback movement and stuff. But what I was saying when you hop back on was that I think that similar to last year, I think because Jimmy Garoppolo isn't necessarily on anyone's number one list, given, some of the prospective quarterbacks that could be on the move. No disrespect to Jimmy Garoppolo, but the reality situation is I think that there are a few players that teams are going to, kind of wait to see where they land, because if they're in play for Derek Carr, or if the Ravens can't get things figured out with Lamar Jackson and he could be on the move or something, or if Aaron Rodgers, if the Packers are going to be entertaining trade opportunities for Aaron Rodgers, I think that team, I think they may be in play for those players, may kind of wait to see if they're in the running or not, and then consider the Jimmy Garoppolos or Zach Wilson's if they move on, if the Jets trade him or move him on or whatever the case. One other one that I didn't bring up was the Falcons. So they were heavy, obviously, right, last year on Deshaun Watson. So if they were going all in on Deshaun Watson, if there's a possibility that someone like Lamar Jackson could be available, if they can't get their contract stuff all figured out or whatever, they may be all in on him too. So I know we were kind of talking about this, pre-show, but I think, I could foresee Jimmy going to any of those places, to be honest, but I think it may kind of be like the second wave, right? After some of those, one chip already fell, right? Tom Brady already retired. So he's not, someone that we have to wait on. And then as it relates to, Lamar Jackson, Aaron Rodgers,